Hello, my name is Michelle Cohen, and this presentation will focus on the negotiation between Lucasfilms and Disney. On October 3rd, 2012, George Lucas, the CEO of Lucasfilms, signed his company over to Robert Iger, the CEO of Disney. This agreement gave Disney full ownership of the Star Wars franchise and Lucasfilm's subsidiaries. The bargaining positions of each CEO was pretty straightforward. George Lucas was willing to sell his company for a lump sum of money, and Robert Iger was willing to negotiate a price. Estimating a price for the Lucasfilms was actually extremely simple. George Lucas's company maintained a database called the Holocron, named after a crystal cube powered by the Force. The real-world Holocron lists 17,000 characters in the Star Wars universe inhabiting several thousand planets over a span of more than 20,000 years. Due to the infinite Star Wars storyline, both CEOs knew from previous successes that the Star Wars franchise can continue to grow. With this information, George and Robert discussed how much the imaginary world really costs. George Lucas's underlying interest was to sell his company and begin his retirement. George was quoted saying, "I am moving away from the business, from the company, from all of this kind of stuff." After making movies for 40 years, George believed that it was his time to retire. On the other hand, Robert Iger was formulating ideas on how to expand the Star Wars franchise. He knew that an infinite amount of ideas can be formulated around the Star Wars universe. This thought pattern led to the creation of a third trilogy and additional spin-off movies. The three negotiation techniques that were presented in this conflict were neutral criteria, mutual benefits, and power. During the negotiation, George Lucas and Robert Iger decided to break the payment into two forms. Based on Disney's closing price on October 26th, the deal is valued at roughly $1.4 billion. Disney will pay half that value in cash and issue 4 million shares of Disney to pay for the rest. George and Robert had agreed on a feasible form of payment. This agreement led to the mutual benefit. George Lucas was able to begin his retirement with a large fortune, and Robert Iger gained full control of the Star Wars franchise. Robert now has the ability to continue the Star Wars storyline and increase future profits for Disney. The final negotiation technique that was presented is power. Both parties are extremely successful and well known throughout the film industry. Both George and Robert were very confident when signing the contracts, and they both spoke very highly of one another in the YouTube video, Disney to Acquire Lucasfilm. This shows that both parties had a tremendous amount of respect for one another's power and status. What went well in this negotiation was the trust that was built between George Lucas and Robert Iger. According to a blog post on Harvard Law School's website, Iger won over Lucas's trust by showing that a Lucasfilm purchase was worthy of his personal attention. Iger and Lucas conducted their deal over the course of a year and a half. Remember, it takes time to prove that you're trustworthy. Taking time to earn the trust of a business partner is very important. Robert wanted to make sure that George was comfortable with his decision to sell his company. Something that went wrong with the negotiation was George Lucas's future plans for the Star Wars franchise. Before the negotiation started, George said, "We had already signed Mark and Carrie and Harrison," or we were pretty much in the final stages of negotiation. Characters were already in place before Disney even got a call. George began creating the movie cast even though he was selling his company to Disney. After finding this information out, Iger told Lucas that even though Lucasfilm was the creative driving force of the new movies, he still wanted Lucas to know that Disney had the final say. I am sure this situation created minor conflict between the two parties during the negotiation process. After a year and a half of negotiating, George Lucas and Robert Iger were able to reach an agreement. George sold Lucasfilms to Disney for $4 billion, half of which was paid in Disney shares. This agreement didn't form a long-term relationship. George sold his company and began planning his retirement. Robert was satisfied with the purchase and began formulating ideas and working on the future of the Star Wars franchise.